everyone. Welcome back to the BizBlend podcast, where business meets heart, leadership meets growth, and real impact is built from the inside out. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today in this episode, we are diving into what it truly means to lead with intention, scale with clarity, and grow with impact. And joining me is someone who doesn't just talk leadership, listeners. She builds it. Listeners, meet Christine Hernandez. She is a seasoned CEO, Enneagram leadership coach, investor, and the powerhouse behind three multi generational companies. She now works closely with founders and executives to help them solve team dynamic issues by anchoring into three things: vision, mission, and the core values. And what I love about Christine is her no fluff, no hype approach. She's not here just to motivate, she's here to architect real, sustainable leadership from the inside out. So let's get quickly into the discussion, listeners. So, Christine, welcome to the show, and it is such an honor to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super pumped to hop into this conversation.
Absolutely. So, I mean, uh, business 101, we study about having the core vision, mission, and then of course the values. And you help leaders reconnect with all the three things. But many founders, and including me, we feel like that we are too busy putting out fires and we don't have time to reflect on those things, or maybe naturally, or maybe intentionally. So how do you guide leaders to rediscover their internal compass while also staying operational?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that honestly in our sales process has been challenging because as CEOs or as high level leaders, we're busy. And so, how do you make time for that and the day to day? And so, one of the things that I found most helpful is if we have the opportunity we get the leaders that we work with out of their space. And we'll usually break away for an intensive or a retreat for 2 days and get everything mapped out, and then the integration of that is really simple once you get it mapped out. And we're able to do it from a place where you can go back and you know what you're going to do with that on Monday. It's not just going to be a nice, statement behind your desk or in your office, but it's
Mhm.
something that we actually teach how to make decisions from. And so I think when we understand that through line, and how to utilize that information in the day to day when you're hiring, when you're firing people, when you're making buying decisions, I think it's a lot easier to carve out that time because we all have the same amount of time, but it's all in how are we going to invest in that, right? Like what are the things that we're gonna invest in specifically with time, that are gonna make our day-to-day easier? So, I think a lot of it is getting out of your space and getting in a place where you can take a breath. We try to get people into beautiful places. We try to get people use, modalities like, contrast therapy and movement to get that time to be really impactful, so we're not just sitting in a boring boardroom, and just on a whiteboard, but we actually try to get that space and that time super interactive so we can accomplish more together.
Hmm. And of course, and talking with respect to the team, I think when a team doesn't know what exactly it is working towards, uh, the culture starts to shift or drift. Basically, it's like driving a car without a destination and burning fuel. So burnout, of course, it is inevitable.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think when we work with teams, because we do work a lot with teams, you have to understand, like, we don't just build a lot of marketing teams or a lot of different people will build your mission, vision, values from just the company standpoint, but we start with the human first. And so if you know your personal mission, you know your personal vision and your personal core values, essentially what matters most to you and why you do what you do, you're gonna be more apt to show up for the company, whether you're a core leader within that company or whether you're an employee. And so one of the things that we do is we actually give everybody the same access to those tools to develop a personal mission, vision, and values so that they can understand how they fit into the bigger picture of the organization. And we try to do that. We have a product that does that all the way down to your entry level employees. Because if they understand why they're there and why and how they fit in, they're going to be more apt to be sold out and bought into that company mission. And so I find that really helpful to make sure that it's personal to every employee, every team member. Then it's not just something that they're doing for the company, but it's actually a personal initiative, right? It's something that I care about regardless of where I'm at in the company.
Hmm. Another aspect, a very interesting aspect of your work is you help leaders shift their team from employee thinking to ownership. uh, which is kind of, I think many of today's employees won't mind about, because that's really a powerful frame. Because I guess the basics of any company or a business is built on this, relationship, this deep innate relationship of their employees, not thinking just from a perspective of, I'll just show up there, get my salary, and that's it, it's done, but actually owning up. So can you walk us through what this transformation looks like in practice?
Yeah, I won't say that it's necessarily like an exercise that we can go through in one day, but
Mhm.
when we have an ownership minded culture, and you give people autonomy plus support, because I think as leaders, a lot of times we'll give autonomy, but what we're really saying is, I don't want to help you or support you. So figure it out on your own, which a lot of times can create resentment. But when we can kind of have both of those things together, when we have autonomy plus support, and there's instead of a boss, a subordinate relationship,
Mhm.
when we have true connection within our culture and we actually teach and we are a culture that embraces failure and teaches our people what it looks like to go through failure, that owner mindset actually starts to get cultivated. And so I think it still starts with under helping people understand what matters most to them. Why are they showing up to this job every single day? And then why does that matter at a deeper level to them? So I'm a huge fan of asking the question why, right, to our employees. And when we have a customer service challenge or a lot of it's just teaching the leaders in the organization how to lead. A couple weeks ago, we had a client that had a customer service challenge and they lost a lot of money. They lost a client that had been with them for a long time, but being able to meet with that leader that made the decisions that ended them in the place that they were in, and just asking questions why that mattered to them and why they thought that was a good decision,
Mm.
um, it changed the outcome of how that person was thinking, and they actually reached out to the client, and ended up getting them back because we were able to teach the core leadership how to actually interact with that employee. And I think sometimes we expect our core leaders to understand how to have hard conversations. And so I think one of the biggest places or opportunities we have to teach an owner mindset is in conflict or is in failure. And so if we can actually own those things, then it's easier to own the things that are day to day. And so we try to utilize things like scripts and typical KPIs. We teach
Mhm.
people how to interact with their teams in a place of, oh, this is how you actually do it from not just the script perspective, but the mindset perspective. Because if that person has a script, but they're not confident and they don't actually take ownership or they don't actually connect to that script and what they're doing and the bigger picture of how that impacts the entire company, I think we're always gonna be playing a losing battle, right? All of a sudden, you don't have to solve problems for your people because they know how to solve them themselves because 'cause they're invested in what they're doing and they're connected to the bigger picture. And so I think one of the other things, last thing I'll say to this is really helping people understand that their job matters and it does add value across the whole company. When you show up well, your impact is a ripple. And if we can teach every leader, regardless of their position or their hierarchy in the company, that their impact matters, them showing up, it matters and it's making a difference. And we take that really seriously. All of a sudden, they're going to think more like an owner because they're going to realize that every decision they make does have an impact on not just themselves, but other people.
That definitely shifts this, perspective about uh, the employer and the employer relationship. Definitely such a powerful reframing that every person, every employee, uh, and their role, it matters. They are making contribution, maybe in small or big roles. They are making contribution towards the company, company's success, sustainability, longevity. Um,
Mhm.
Also, you have helped, if I talk about the numbers, you have helped companies go from $17,000 a month to $3 million a month, while keeping their culture intact. How exactly? I mean, this is incredibly rare, Christine. So, how exactly it is possible? What are the most overlooked leadership habits, or I should say, blind spots that derail scaling?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. That was it was a little bit of a long project, but and we've had a long-standing relationship with and we have many numbers like that. But I think one of the biggest things is the hiring process. We put butts in seats. And when we put butts in seats, we're not actually really taking the time to understand if that person is a culture fit. So I'm someone who likes to hire for culture first
Okay.
and then hire for skill. I think that's one of the biggest things that we overlook is we need someone to fill this role, so we just hire the first person. And in that specific project, we we actually had to eliminate a couple of people in different positions because it wasn't adding value. And those people were not bought into the bigger mission of that organization. And so that was the first thing. Like it was a really uncomfortable project going into it because part of what we were supporting the team, and we never make recommendations, you need to let this person go or anything like that. But when we get clear on our mission and vision and our values, all of a sudden the people who are not in alignment with that, they leave. And so we actually find that when we work with companies pretty regularly, people actually have a lot of turnover or some turnover because the people who are not aligned with that organization and what matters most or where they're headed, they kind of just don't fit anymore and it becomes uncomfortable for both parties. So they'll make the decision to make a better choice for their lifestyle and what matters to them. And so that was one of the biggest pieces with that is that project we hired a lot and we also had some turnover when we went into it. And I think the second thing that really made a difference, honestly, was being able to teach the leaders that they did have that were a right fit how to
Mhm.
have hard conversations and difficult conversations in alignment with their culture and do it fast because they were kinda just shoving a lot of things under the rug in that circumstance, and we find that a lot. One of the biggest oversights, in organizations is we're doing things to make people feel comfortable
Mhm.
versus to see them grow and to see the organization grow, and when you're choosing comfort over growth, everybody loses, because if your bottom line is not growing and you're not meeting your goals, eventually you're gonna have to let go of those people. And instead of them having the decision to grow within that organization, they're going to be forced to leave because you didn't have the hard conversations that everybody needed you to have. So I like to say taking growth seriously is one of the biggest things you can do. And to do that, you're going to have to kiss your comfort goodbye. And sometimes you're not going to be liked as a leader. And so I'd say those are probably my two biggest kind of keys to success when we're trying to really push on the numbers and we're looking at growth is you just have to make the hard decisions. And then the client conversation follows. So once you can actually figure that out internally, then your bottom line and your client acquisition grows naturally because you're all on the same page, you're all headed to the same direction.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like I can draw parallel uh to offer business to a person who is internally aligned with their values, and they are connecting with the like-minded people in driving that purpose. It's kind of the collective consciousness coming together and driving that values, those values. So thank you for sharing that, Christine. And talking about the Enneagram, so you use Enneagram to support leadership growth. And a lot of people see it as just another personality test, but you go deeper into that. So, how does it actually shape, teams operating and trusting each other?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I love most about the Enneagram, and I've used this, I've used Myers-Briggs. I'm certified in quite a few different things because I'm a curious person. But I love the Enneagram because it gives us a common language. And I think that's one thing that most personality tests do. They give us a common language to speak from in an organization. And I think language matters. But the other thing that I really love about the Enneagram over some of the other personality tests or tools that we use that are similar is it allows us to understand what the people in our organizations or ourselves look like when we're in stress versus when we're in growth. And I think that's a really valuable tool because a lot of times, like for example, I'm a challenger on the Enneagram. When I'm in stress, it looks real sexy. Like it looks really good. People are like, you're driving, you're pushing, you're knowledgeable, you're the leader. And sometimes when I'm in that place, it looks very different than when I'm in growth, because in growth, I'm a helper and I'm supporting people and I'm connected to people. And so my team knows based on the Enneagram, when I kind of tuck away and I choose to drive more than I do connect, they know I'm in stress. And so they can ask better questions, not from a state of blame or, hey, you're not doing it right, but really coming beside the leaders that are around you and saying, hey, like, what support do you need? How can I help you? Seems like you're under a lot of stress right now. Or what can we do to support you in this season? And asking great questions, I think, can be really helpful. It also allows us to understand how people respond to certain communication. So if somebody tells me to slow down versus asking me how to support or how they can support me, it's going to make a really big difference. I don't respond well when people tell me to slow down because that means I have to choose to put my goals down, and that's just not something I'm willing to do. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That's a part of my personality. But if somebody comes alongside me and says, "Hey, how can I support you? Looks like you have a lot on your plate right now. I'd love to help. How can I do that?" I'm going to be a lot more responsive and less defensive. And so it helps us understand how to communicate with each other. I could go on and on for days about this, but I would say overall, that's probably one of the most helpful things. And,
Yeah.
DISC and some of those other tools are really helpful from an internal perspective, but the Enneagram gives us an insight into that whole person without putting us into a box because there's lots of different ways to look at each human. And there's not one challenger that's all the same. There's not one peacemaker that's all the same. We're all different. We all have wings and second numbers, but it gives us that baseline.
I can sense that excitement in your voice, Christine, talking about Enneagram. And
Yeah.
so sometimes there's a pushback from data-driven leaders who say that these personality systems, they aren't measurable enough, or they don't give enough of that ground reality. So how do you respond to skeptics while keeping your approach grounded and also results focused?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we've worked with companies that have had those judgments or that have not been aligned. And I think that we try to work with the things that people resonate with because if you're not on board, then it's going to be really hard to interact with that. But we do have some stipulations. Like there's ways to not use the Enneagram when we do what we do. Um, But I think just continuously pointing out the benefits and then helping them use it in alignment with what matters to them and within their culture. The biggest thing I've seen with the Enneagram or any personality test is it can be used against you. And so, as a leader, one of the things we do is we help everyone in the organization understand how to use it for good and not for the harm of others. Because it is a tool, it's any type of wisdom that we're inserting that connects to somebody else's identity or how they're seeing themselves or their personality. It can be used for harm. And the other thing is, we really try to push on the idea that, like, this is a way to look at yourself, but it's not exactly your identity. So you need to actually use it to grow, not to justify who you have been, but actually to grow into who you were created to be. And we have lots of stats. So we have tons of stats. So if it's just someone who doesn't understand that it's going to make an impact on the bottom line or tactically um, we have lots of stats that show organizations that use tools like the Enneagram have 75% more buy-in and retention within their teams because their teams feel more seen, more valued, and people who feel seen and valued, they want to show up and they want to do more work and they want to make an impact. And so I think part of it's just education. And then the other part of it is helping people understand how it's gonna work for them and really listening to that.
Hmm, that is great. So, Christine, before we wrap up, you have built businesses that spans, generations, and now you help others do the same. So, for all the founders or entrepreneurs today who want to build something with longevity and legacy, especially, right now in these challenging times, what's your biggest piece of advice?
Ooh, that's a good question. If you're wanting to build a legacy, you have to start with knowing what your legacy is and what matters most to you. So, if you're a leader or a founder, you have to start with you and you have to get clear on who you are, what matters most. I know I've said that a lot today, but I don't think we take the time to understand those things. So, I would say start with that and get really clear on what does matter because you're not going to drive at a business that doesn't matter. Ask me how I know. I have tried. And that's part of, why I sold my first two companies is because they didn't matter at the same level. So get really clear on what matters to you and the legacy you want to leave outside of just money. So many times I have three kids, my daughter's 20, and I could give her all the money, but I'd rather teach her things that are going to help her understand how to have her money make money. And so I think if we can understand what our legacy is outside of money and just giving our kids or our teams or organizations the ability to just have financial wealth, I think we'll go a lot further and it'll just matter more and we'll feel better about it. And therefore, our teams will feel better about it as well. So I'd say that's my number one thing.
Lovely, lovely. Great, great. Christian, if our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, um, Christine Hernandez, or at Impact Initiative. And then I am on Instagram quite regularly, and that's Bold Leader Co. is my handle. So I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear your story and what legacies look like for you. So please do connect.
Great. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes for our listeners. And Christine, once again, thank you. Thank you so much. I guess this was one of those conversations that I personally um, can, take away to do a bit of self introspection about how I lead, not just what I do. So thank you for your clarity, your wisdom, and your honesty. They're really gift, and thank you for sharing all the golden nuggets today on BizBlend. So to all of our listeners, if you are feeling inspired to lead more consciously, Scale with soul and build with intention. Go check out Christine's work. And if this episode resonated, share it with a fellow founder or a leader who needs to hear this. Until next time, keep building what matters. Thank you.